Tonight, an all-new Truth Behind the Rumors. You'll find out the real stories behind the blow-ups and brawls at Laverne Shirley.
She just backed up her car, gunned it, and drove right through the wooden gate.
You know, you're always scared of failing.
You are the star of this show, and she is trying to take it away from you.
You could hear the screaming coming through the wall.
But it wasn't all fighting.
Everybody was involved with everybody at one point or another.
Or as one of my friends put it, you got a regular little Peyton place happening over there, don't you?
If they were doing coke, it was an up show. If they were smoking grass, it would be a down, laid-back show.
And you'll hear the truth behind the outrageous behavior at Cheers.
The producer said, you know, you almost like killed Woody.
Shelley, was truly despised.
She was Penny and Cindy combined.
Bye-bye, babe. He'd have consumed a fifth of scotch by run-through time. He'd stink. He was way off the map.
All tonight on The Truth Behind the Rumors. For a TV sitcom to rank #1 in the ratings, it usually takes years of hard work and millions of dollars of publicity. Seinfeld debuted in 1989 and didn't take the top spot until 1994. Cheers ranked dead last its first year and didn't make #1 until its 8th season. But in January of 1976, a mid-season replacement show made television history when it debuted in the #1 slot, Laverne Shirley.
We really didn't know what it meant. Neither one of us. None of us. We looked at it and they go, 60 million people watch the show.
They read the ratings, and we had, a 60 share or something, and I thought it was like a D. 60 out of 100, isn't that a D?
Even to this day, I can't put it in my brain. Of course, my brain, never mind.
Laverne and Shirley also made history as being one of the most talked about shows in Hollywood. A tabloid writer's dream of bickering and backstabbing, sex and drugs, tantrums and turmoil. The characters of Laverne and Shirley were originally written for an episode of Happy Days as two rough and ready girls that were to date Richie and the Fonz. The show's creator-producer Gary Marshall immediately saw their potential.
He says, I'm going to call in a couple of favors to really kind of cast this episode up. I think maybe we kind of have something here. So he got his sister, Penny, and Cindy, who he had known for a couple of years, and, got them to do the parts.
These two young and talented women came together in their guest roles on Happy Days and created a chemistry that was pure magic.
I saw something incredible happening before my eyes. I saw two actresses do things that no one else on television was doing.
They worked so well together. I mean, they just seemed to know what each other was going to do. And
that was our favorite episode on Happy Days.
Gary Marshall sent the episode to the heads of ABC, Fred Silverman and Michael Eisner.
They said, if you can deliver these two women, you can not only have a show, you can have the time slot after Happy Days.
There was only one problem with this fairy tale story. Cindy had a blossoming career as a film actress with featured roles in George Lucas's American Graffiti and Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation.
Cindy didn't want to do a TV series. She still had a movie career.
To some extent, she came in with the attitude of this might turn out to be a gigantic long-term blunder.
I didn't feel that I did my best work in television. I'd done a little television, and I felt that I was much better either doing stage or performing in films. There is a difference.
And then Penny said, one more try. Let me call Cindy. And she convinced her.
They made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
I thank God that somebody hit me over the head and said, you better do it. Of course, the name she called me when I finally did decide to do it.
Which was like Fool. I believe it had a little more than 4 letters in it, though. And we were off to the races then.
Rounding out the cast was New York actor Eddie Mecca as Carmine, Shirley's sometime boyfriend, veteran comic Phil Foster as Laverne's father, and Laverne and Shirley's two comic counterparts, Michael McKean and David Lander as Lenny and Squiggy.
We said we're the anal nitrate twins. You pop us, we make you laugh for 3 minutes, and then we go away.
Originally called Lenny and Anthony, the two had created the characters while in college together.
I had known David and Michael, and I knew these two characters they did, so I had a party at my house and had them come and had the producers come and went, get into your characters.
And the next day I got a call from Gary Marshall. who said, listen, those two guys, Lenny and Benny, whatever, you know, he never got the names right. He said, maybe they might be good. Penny'd like you to be in the show.
Laverne Shirley first appeared on Happy Days in November of 1975. 2 months later, they were starring in their own show, watched by over 63 million Americans.
Yeah, we were stunned. We don't talk about it.
Well,
we're too stunned to talk about it.
We don't get out of the studio much, and when we do, I mean, and people come up and say, "Oh, you're Laverne." I say, "No, I'm Shirley." But when they do that, it does. I mean, you have to. You take it to heart, and you start saying, "Well, maybe we are popular."
With this tremendous success also came tremendous insecurity.
They didn't know how to handle this flash of success.
You know, you're always scared of failing on something, but so now the pressure that you make a hit, now the next project has to be, I thought I would just be learning. They didn't understand how they got so popular, and so they were afraid it was going to all be taken away at any second.
This fear resulted in some outrageous behavior.
Cindy pulled up to the gate. You know, they have a wooden arm across the gate, and the guards didn't recognize her, and she thought they should have recognized her by then. So she just backed up her car, gunned it, and drove right through the wooden gate.
For any actor, overnight stardom can be hard to deal with, but having that stardom split between two performers can be even more difficult.
Somebody would write something like, well, they're the funniest female team since, Lucy and Ethel. And I think they start to say to themselves, well, which one of us is Ethel? You know?
Nobody wanted to be Ethel.
But in fact, they were both Lucy. Only behind the scenes, it was Penny who was Lucy. And that's where the problem was. Because behind the scenes, Penny went home to dinner or went to family reunions with everybody who was in power in the show. And Cindy went off by herself.
In addition to Penny's brother Gary being the executive producer and creator of Laverne and Shirley, Penny's father was also a producer, and her sister Ronny was the casting director.
And that, I think, led to the difficulties that Cindy had, was that somebody whispered in her ear and said they're all on her side.
Because everywhere she looked, someone was related to Penny. So after a while, I guess, and her manager was saying, don't you see? They're all martial people. We're under martial law.
You are the star of this show, and she is trying to take it away from you.
It wasn't true, because we made sure that everybody knew, yes, we're here for your family, but when we're at work, we're at work.
Compounding the Marshall family atmosphere was the fact that the writing staff also came from the same New York Bronx background.
There was 8,000 people who had been working on that show who had been born within a 3-block radius in the Bronx.
Cindy's character was the more difficult to write for us because we were Laverne.
They hadn't really found my character.
Cindy's frustration with the writing eventually came to a head.
I said something I shouldn't have to Cindy. I said something that was probably somewhat rude, based on her demeaning the material. And Gary came up to see me and said, I think it's time we made a change here.
When Cindy fired these two writers, in one of these, she got more lines than I got. Then Penny went into a rage that lasted for 2 years. I mean, we are not talking well-balanced here.
While Cindy was struggling with the insecurity of feeling like an outsider professionally, Penny's insecurities were more personal.
Penny's insecurities had nothing to do with performing that I could see. Her insecurities were more personal, and I could never understand why.
I like the way I look in life. Why should I like it on television? I keep thinking it will change. Makeup, hair. This is it normally. This is with nothing.
To me, she was my girlfriend. And when I have a girlfriend, they're always pretty, smart, kind, lovely. And that's all, I saw. But she did not, and Penny will be the first one to admit she never saw that.
Well, it's just that Cindy's so cute. I want to be cute. She has a dimple. She's cute. Little nose. King nose.
Coming up, what it was like working next door to Laverne and Shirley.
You could hear the screaming coming through the wall.
How certain behind-the-scenes activities affected the cast performance.
If they were doing coke, it was an up show. If they were smoking grass, it would be a down, laid-back show.
And the actors share their opinions with the writers.
Into my office, landed on my desk, a script in flames.
Yeah, I threw a script every so often.
All when the truth behind the rumors continues. When a show's success hinges on two equally important stars, it isn't long before others begin to feel the pressure.
They had to have exactly the same everything. Otherwise, that very, very shaky relationship would have been even more difficult unless it was made real clear from the beginning. You get TV in your dressing room, she gets exactly the same TV in her dressing room. You get an assistant, she gets an assistant.
It all became a war of, if you get X, I want X, and if you get X plus, I get X plus.
There was a big fight over the titles. The Laverne and Shirley, Penny and Cindy. Okay, you'll be on the top, but you'll be on the other side.
They got to a point where, they were sitting on the set, counting the number of lines.
This is when things were really at their absolute worst. To decide who had more minutes.
It's really hard to do a show with two people who are supposed to be equal partners always, because they're not going to be equal partners every week. One week it's going to be a show where Laverne is going to have more to do, and one week it's going to be a show where Shirley has more to do.
These writers were just caught in the middle of a firestorm between two women who could not get out of it.
Gary Marshall is quoted as saying that one executive, on seeing Penny and Cindy leaving the stage, actually considered hitting them with his car.
Wasn't me. I'd have waited till they all got in the group and hit it with a Humvee.
But the most biting criticism came from the actor who played Andrew Squigman.
David came from another place that I don't understand.
A lot of these guys had come from The Odd Couple, which was another Gary show. So sometimes you read the script and you go, I saw this just last week in reruns, The Odd Couple.
David had Tourette's syndrome when it came to reading a script and analyzing it. We'll say, he'd just do it out loud instead of keeping it to himself. And it'd be very funny, but very cutting.
When we write something, our ego is there on the page. And so when you rip it up and throw it across the room, you're hurting me.
Yeah, I do a script every so often, and that got sort of well-known, I suppose, as a real arrogant or hostile thing, and I probably was, I was very young and I was very angry.
David Lander could be mean. He could be cruel. My second day that I was there, we had gone to the table read, and it was a script that David and Michael had written. They thought of themselves as really, really great geniuses. And they had written that week's episode, and we went down to the table read, and the table read did not go that well. And so that night, we stayed up. I mean, I think we were there till 5 in the morning rewriting that script and trying to be real careful and trying to be respectful of of certain of their stuff. And it's my first day on the show, and I said, man, I've never worked so hard, but I did a really good job, and there's just going to be a lot of appreciation from the cast for that. And I come in, I'm sitting in my office at 10 o'clock the next morning. I see Michael and David start to walk by, and into my office, landed on my desk, a script in flames. They have just torched a script and thrown it at me.
I know that one time Chris and Mark wanted to kill David. And I know that it went so far as them pushing him up against the wall and saying, don't you dare talk to us like this anymore.
There was, however, one set of circumstances that would make the writer and director's jobs much easier.
It was easier for us to get along with Penny and Cindy as writers when they weren't getting along. When, they were fighting with each other, our lives were much easier because that's where the focus was.
Obviously, if they were arguing, they couldn't create a sort of united front against the script in any way, and one of them might say she liked something just to spite the other.
You would take the emotional temperature on the stage every week and go, are they liking each other this week? Yes, they are. Damn, they like each other this week. Oh, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a bad week.
The writers were not the only ones who had a difficult time with the cast.
It was hell to get them to come out of their dressing room. We had one person, an assistant director, and this lady could get them out. How she did it, I have no idea.
I was sort of the viper wrangler. I was in the pit with the vipers every day.
They were not ready to put in the work during the week.
I won't do it.
Go,
I'm
no,
sorry,
go.
it's a personal thing.
Go.
I'm going. Give me a break.
If you're doing tough stuff, you better be rehearsing as much as you can, and we didn't.
All right, hold it.
There's
How can I hold it? I just let go.
paper
Just be quiet.
shortage. What are you
Just be
doing?
quiet.
The cast's constant refusal to rehearse resulted in a typical pre-show ritual.
What we say, do you know your lines?
No, do you?
No.
Let's go.
We'll wing it.
In contrast to the outrageous behavior on the Laverne and Shirley set, Gary Marshall's other hit on the Paramount lot was considerably more calm.
We shot on the stage right next door to Happy Days.
Happy Days, they were always happy. They didn't complain. You never threw a script over there. Everyone was happy.
They were polite, and they were scrubbed, and they were clean, and by golly and by gosh.
We used to call them the Stepford actors. They just come in, they finish rehearsals at 3 o'clock, and they go out and buy a car, and they come back. They finish rehearsals at 3 o'clock, they go out and buy a house, and they come back. So it was all very nice and happy over there.
You could hear the screaming coming through the wall. They were in the next stage. One day I saw Gary sitting up in our stands like this. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I just came from next door. I think I created a monster."
Finally, Marshall was fed up with the constant turmoil.
I never saw him as near tears as he was, and he said to the group, which included his sister, that if you're not happy with this material, you can walk out the door, and I'll pay you for every episode that's due you, but you will not denigrate the material, and you will not denigrate what the writers have done.
You cannot treat these people this way anymore. It stops now.
They were fine for about 8 minutes, and then it was right back where we started.
The pressure and tension eventually began to drive the staff away.
We went through 12 writing staffs at about 12 people a staff. So that's like 144 people went through our portals.
And by that time, the patients were running the asylum.
Eventually, we couldn't get a real director to do more than one show. That last year that I was there, it was me, the script supervisor, and the dialogue coach directing.
I remember going into the writer's room to talk to them about something. They had a big poster of Penny and Cindy, and they were throwing darts at it.
And they just basically said, I can't do the work anymore. I can't write for these people. I can't write for people I don't like.
After 7 years, I finally went to Gary Marshall and I said, "Gary, even convicted murderers usually get paroled after 7 years." And he knew exactly what I meant.
Coming up, the truth behind Laverne and Shirley's backstage romances.
Or as one of my friends put it, you got a regular little Peyton place happening over there, don't you?
I think we both felt the same way. I'll be in love with you until someone better comes along.
And the off-screen antics at Cheers get dangerous.
The producer said, you almost like killed Woody. So, we can't do this anymore.
All when the truth behind the rumors continues. As hard as the cast and crew of Laverne and Shirley worked, they played equally hard.
I would need to draw you a flow chart to give you the complex romantic complications that went on through that stage, through the other stages, involving nearly everyone, with the exception, thank God, of Phil Foster. It was. But again, that was the whole studio at the time. Our stages were all just lined up next to each other. You just go back and forth to the different stages.
It was like a college campus. You had Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, Taxi, Bosom Buddies, Mork and Mindy.
You'd watch a run-through over here. You'd watch them rehearsing Mork over here. You'd go over to Happy Days here, go down to Solid Gold.
Then, of course, you had Little House on the Prairie. Let's not forget that heathenistic cast.
By the way, a writer trying to pick up a Solid Gold dancer is just almost an impossibility anyway, but certainly we tried.
We were all single and footloose and fancy-free.
Cindy and I went together for a while, and we broke up a lot during that time. We didn't have a great relationship. And so we would get together every night, and we'd go out together, and then, we'd stay together and then go back to work the next day after we'd broken up the previous night. And then after about 12 hours of rehearsing, we'd turn around and go, well, there's always you. Well, there's always you. Okay. What it was, and I think we both felt the same way, I'll be in love with you until someone better comes along.
It was truly like a dysfunctional family.
Or as one of my friends put it, you got a regular little Peyton place happening over there, don't you?
But everybody was involved with everybody at one point or another. I could describe it as a dysfunctional family, but let's go further, say a dysfunctional family in Kentucky.
Hollywood in the late 70s also had another great temptation.
Drugs were rampant in the Hollywood studios. Nobody was drug testing their stars at that time.
I mean, that was a time of recreational drugs. Everybody was doing it.
It was paramount in the 70s, and it was wild.
If they were doing coke, it was an up show. And if they were smoking grass, it would be a down, laid-back show.
Yeah, I remember when Gary told us that, because he suspected there may be some people smoking marijuana, and he had given the studio guards the right to bust people. And I said, Gary, what if a studio guard comes and busts me right before the show? Are we gonna like tell the audience go home because we don't have this actor anymore because he's been taken to the police station?
And I certainly partaked in. It was one of the causes. I had a massive stroke when I was 37. Probably caused by recreational drug use.
The times were wild. The partying was wild.
In spite of all the backstage drama, Laverne and Shirley continued to draw a huge audience. And no matter how intense the battles between the two stars became, there remained a loyalty and bond between Penny and Cindy that was impossible to break.
You can't do a show like this and not like the other person. There's no way. An audience would know that right away.
That's why the show worked. If they really hated each other, then it wouldn't have worked.
We have a relationship that's almost like a marriage sometimes, and we just know it's going to end up
You look
on the front
wonderful
page.
when you're angry.
Yeah.
Those kind
I
of
really
things.
liked that little gesture you made last night.
A perfect example of their relationship's strength came during Penny's divorce from All in the Family star Rob Reiner.
She just took me in her dressing room and she said, you know, getting a divorce. And I said, are you okay? And she said, no. She said, I'm blind. I said, what? She goes, I can't see anything. She'd had a whiteout from the stress of it and from the agony of it. And then we walked around the stage. I said, here's your mark here. And I said, do you want to come over to my house? No, I'm okay. I said, do you need someone to drive you home? It was just girlfriends, you know, and hurting for someone that you really care about and hating to see that happen to them in their life and trying to say, things will get better. You'll get your eyesight back and things will be so much better.
As popular as Laverne and Shirley was with the public, it was equally ignored by a large part of the television industry.
I mean, you look back on that show and the cast of characters, and you could sit down and watch it at any moment and you would just laugh out loud. It was brilliant comedy that has sustained until today. No encouragement from the Hollywood community, laughed at, scorned. And that's when actors feel that, you know, they withdraw into some other cocoon, and I think that added to what they felt on the set. Here we are doing what we think is brilliant. Everybody in America loves it, and we can't. No one in Hollywood will acknowledge us.
They didn't get one single Emmy Award. I don't even know they ever got nominated.
It's unfortunate that people couldn't recognize it for what it was and couldn't recognize their work for what it was. That is bothersome. There was nobody better than Penny and Cindy. They were terrific at what they did. They were funny.
In 1984, the decision was made to relocate Laverne and Shirley from Milwaukee to Hollywood, a decision that was considered unwise by almost everyone connected with the show.
Let's take them out of Milwaukee, where it was fun.
It was really strange. They just took it out of its element, I felt.
That's the sign of whenever a TV show's been on a long time and you have a lot of people getting paid a lot of money to dicker with TV shows, they always come up with, why don't we put them in Los Angeles? Because then they can meet celebrities.
What finally ended the run of Laverne and Shirley was an event that ordinarily would be met with happiness. Cindy Williams and her husband, Bill Hudson, announced that they were expecting a child.
The problems with Cindy Williams' pregnancy were with Cindy Williams. She was just thought we were working her too hard. Her demand was we get a hospital bed on the set, and it was in the middle of the living room, sitting. In between rehearsal scenes, she would lay in her hospital bed.
You're on your feet so much, and it's a grueling schedule, and with the baby, it was very, very difficult.
My God, how tough is it to stand up, say a few words, and walk to another mark?
I was having the kind of pregnancy where I needed certain things. I needed to, you know, I couldn't be on my feet X amount of time, and it just really wasn't all coming together, and I was really more focused on starting my family. So it was time for me to leave.
The controversy over Cindy's work schedule during her pregnancy not only resulted in her leaving the show, but also initiated legal action between Cindy, Paramount, and Gary Marshall.
She says she didn't want more money, but she wanted her hours adjusted. She didn't want to work this. And when she felt that they were making her work 14-hour days, then she just became litigious, trying to sue everybody.
Right after I left, everybody and their mother had a baby, and they set up a nursery. But me, I said, is there a chair anywhere? Anyone?
The minute Cindy left, Penny got her salary. So Penny had some clause in her contract that if Cindy left, then she got Cindy's salary too. I can see why Penny didn't say, oh heck, why should we continue with these episodes with Cindy gone?
One of television's funniest and most popular shows came to a bitter end in 1983. But amazingly, as difficult as it was to work on Laverne and Shirley, everyone interviewed for this program acknowledged it was one of the most creative and exciting times of their lives. And the key was the remarkable talent of Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams.
They were so scared of this success and so scared it was going to go away. And so scared because the show was called Laverne and Shirley. And it's them. And it lives or dies on their shoulders. What could be more frightening to a 30-year-old woman?
The ups and downs were amazing because you'd go from just loathing yourself, saying, I can't do this at all, obviously. I can't write anything because they just complain all the time and I just suck. And then you'd go to the first run-through and it would be singing and you'd go, I'm a genius. I've done it again.
They would be disappointed and upset, but in the end, they would laugh.
It was just a very high emotional place, fueled by insecurity and money and recreational drugs and wanting to be real good.
I don't think they ever realized how good they were together. They were so much in competition. They never had time to relax and really look at how good they were together and why that was the success of the show.
While Laverne and Shirley debuted as a #1 hit with the fans, but was a flop with the critics, the exact opposite was true of Cheers. From its debut in 1982, the reviews of Cheers were glowing, but its first week's ratings put it dead last. Normally, a last-place finish would spell certain death for a show, but executives at the struggling NBC network agreed with the critical praise that Cheers was receiving and kept the show on the air.
NBC was on the bottom, but one thing about being on the bottom is you don't have anything to put on.
The adventures of a bar full of lovable losers would prove to be one of television's most amazing comeback stories. Almost as amazing were the stories of the cast's backstage battles, personal tragedies, and private demons. Coming up, Cheers' not-so-happy family.
Shelley, was truly despised.
She was Penny and Cindy combined in her paranoia.
What was the real chemistry between Ted Danson and Shelley Long?
She was complaining that he was a bad kisser.
All when the truth behind the rumors continues. At the center of Cheers' critical success was the on-screen chemistry of its two main characters.
Sam and Diane, you could put us in a room together and we had a love-hate conflict and you could write forever for it.
The Sam and Diane storylines may have been endless, but their immediate future was definitely in doubt. Cheers finished the year ranked 71st out of 77 shows. But when the Emmy nominations came out, Cheers walked away with 12, winning 5 of them, including one for Shelley Long as Best Actress. But while Shelley may have been popular with the TV Academy, her popularity with the cast and crew left a little to be desired.
Shelley had the same actress diva paranoia that they all seem to catch when they get a certain level of success. But she was Penny and Cindy combined in her paranoia.
Shelley's sort of neurosis worked perfectly for Diane.
Shelley was so paranoid when she had a wardrobe change. She would have to do her hair completely over and her makeup completely over. She couldn't just change her clothes and come back downstairs.
Well, her makeup changed to match whatever color she was wearing.
The 45-minute pause for the audience would kill them, The audience would get so bored waiting.
The audience gets restless and they leave and stuff like that.
And waiting for Shelley and waiting for Shelley and waiting for Shelley.
She is the consummate professional and perfectionist.
I take comedy very seriously, and I take life very seriously.
I went so far as to build her a changing room on the stage so she could change without anybody seeing her. But that didn't help because she still went upstairs for makeup and hair. So eventually the writers on Cheers just wrote everything to happen in one day, just particularly so Shelley wouldn't have to change her wardrobe.
She was, you know, sort of the odd person in the bar and the odd person in the set.
According to Shelley, however, the Cheers cast was just one big happy family.
Our cast came together. There was a rapport and a family feeling among the cast and among the whole group that you don't always have right off the bat. Sometimes you have to work very hard at that, and we didn't.
So you meet like the people don't like on the show, and they go, oh, we're close personal friends. Not there.
Shelley, you know, was truly despised.
When I got there, nobody was speaking. Nobody was speaking to Shelley, and Shelley wasn't speaking to anyone.
While Shelley's off-screen relationship with the cast got colder, the producers decided to heat up Sam and Diane's on-screen romance.
It is a relationship now, as opposed to two people who are trying to avoid a relationship. But it is just as explosive and rocky and conflicting as our non-relationship.
She was complaining that he was a bad kisser, and he felt like she was lying.
It wasn't Shelley versus Ted. It wasn't Shelley versus the writers. It was kind of Shelley versus everybody.
There was this one show in the first season where Carla kisses Sam, and Shelley got very upset about that show, that Carla got to kiss Sam, and she went home and she was like swooning and stuff like that. That was a little weird.
Nah, I'm not the jealous type.
While Shelley Long may not have won any popularity contest with the cast and crew of Cheers, there was one actor who was apparently liked by everyone: the coach, Nicholas Colasanto. Colasanto had made a name for himself both as an actor and as director of such popular TV series as Bonanza, Columbo, and Starsky and Hutch.
He came off like Coach, like this kind of addled guy, but yet he was a director. You know, he had this amazing body of work.
If you saw this guy on the set, you'd go like, what, he's in charge of sets sometimes? You know, he really seemed like confused.
He's in his own world, which was a good world.
Oh, we had to write his lines on everything. On the backs of glasses, up on the bar, we had lines written.
It reads, "It'll be like having my old pal T-Bone right here with us," which was a line that Nicky Colasanto couldn't remember. He couldn't remember his lines constantly, so he'd write them on everything. It used to be all over the place.
Coming up, Woody and Ted do the full Monty for the audience.
As long as I can remember, we've been doing that, you know, from the first year.
And Kelsey Grammer's alcohol and drug abuse affects the show.
He was missing rehearsals. He'd be asleep in his dressing room.
All when the truth behind the rumors continues. When Cheers began its third season, there were two major additions. Kelsey Grammer stepped into the role of psychiatrist Fraser Crane. And perhaps most importantly, The Cosby Show debuted in a time slot before Cheers, helping to boost the show's ratings into the top 20. Just as the show had finally found its audience, the behind-the-scenes atmosphere was thrown into turmoil. According to Kelsey Grammer, Shelley Long did not want him in the show and publicly campaigned against him.
Kelsey is like so opposite of Shelley. I mean, he's like this really earthy, funky guy. She's kind of prissy.
Grammer, a classically trained actor, had had a life filled with tragedy. In 1968, his father was killed. In 1975, his sister was raped and murdered. And 5 years later, his two half-brothers died in a scuba diving accident.
Even though there's a lot of pain in life, there can be great joy, and you can endure extraordinary hardships and still have a good outlook about it.
All these things just kind of came, just kind of overwhelmed him at that time.
That's why you become an actor. You want to escape. and then when reality hits, you need to keep escaping.
By the time he arrived at Cheers in 1984, Grammer had a substance abuse problem that included marijuana, Valium, and cocaine. That same year, Nicholas Colasanto was diagnosed with an incurable heart disease, and his health began a steady decline.
Nick was very frail. He had lost an enormous amount of weight.
It was just really sad because he was a wonderful, wonderful guy.
Well, we went into mourning, really.
Ted particularly was so upset about it, we couldn't do the episode that way.
With the coach gone, a new character was needed to help out behind the bar. Enter Woody, the naive farm boy, played totally by coincidence by an unknown actor also named Woody, Woody Harrelson.
They wrote the name of the character Woody before Woody was cast.
During the audition process, I remember Jim Burrows and them saying to me, your brother, he doesn't seem very nervous. And I said, no, I guess not. And Woody overheard it. He goes, well, should I be? They said, well, it was like the nation's #1 show. And he goes, I've never seen it before.
Had I had like a, viewer relationship with the characters, and particularly with Nick Colasanto's character, I think it would have been very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, he was perfect for that part. And that's exactly who they were looking for, and maybe unfortunately, but that's pretty much how Woody was. It's kind of funny to see him on Cheers, and I'm thinking that's the guy I grew up with.
Like Kelsey Grammer, Woody Harrelson also had a bad boy reputation and a past marked by tragedy.
No matter how much success that he has as an actor, still knowing that his father is in federal prison for allegedly assassinating a judge kind of puts a damper on everything else.
He feels that our father didn't get a fair trial, and we're now trying to see that he does.
I'm not asking him to spring him out of jail. All I'm saying is give him another trial.
The addition of Woody added a new dimension to the set of Cheers, as well as the ratings. Harrelson brought the show a younger audience, and his youthful energy had a noticeable effect backstage as well.
Well, it was sort of like high school with money.
They did a lot of practical jokes all the time, like Ted, Woody. They all mooned someone as they went by.
Ted was more the ringleader than the leader, because it was like a band of kids.
We just have a great time there, all of us.
Ted went up to Woody and pulled his shorts down, in a rehearsal in front of an audience. And Woody wasn't wearing underwear that day.
That happened every week.
Yeah, but you didn't.
That was.
You didn't have to, Woody. You didn't have to do that. You just ask him.
Ask him. Take your pants down.
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
As long as I can remember, we've been doing that. From the first year, we got this kind of competitive thing going.
Later on, Woody got him back equally as good.
He interrupted Ted in the shower. Ted was all lathered up, and he took a bunch of pictures of him.
Woody took a nude shot and spliced it into the gag reel.
I laughed harder than anyone and sweat at the same time. It was one of those,
It escalated to the point where we were hiding from people and trying to drop trash bags full of water on their heads. And I think the producer said, you almost like killed Woody. So, we can't do this anymore.
Coming up, the theories behind Shelley Long leaving Cheers.
A little bit of ego involved there.
And the cast rebels against Kelsey Grammer.
He'd have consumed a fifth of scotch by run-through time.
All when the truth behind the rumors continues. The 5th year of Cheers saw more cast changes. In came Bebe Neuwirth as Dr. Lilith Sternin. Her chemistry with Kelsey Grammer turned a one-time guest shot into what would become a 6-year featured role. The biggest cast change, however, had everyone doubting the show's future. In August of 1986, Shelley Long announced a 3-picture deal with Walt Disney Films.
A little bit of ego involved there.
She was the first one who felt like a star.
But what actress would choose to leave in the middle of a successful series?
That actress was Shelley Long. 4 months later, she shocked Hollywood by announcing she would leave Cheers at the end of the season. As difficult as some of the cast and crew had found her to work with, many felt that her departure would kill the show, which had now been ranked as the #3 hit on television. Fears rose higher when Long's replacement was announced, a virtually unknown actress with little comedy experience, Kirstie Alley.
Kirstie had the hardest job. She was replacing, at that time, the biggest female star on television. And people were saying it wasn't going to work.
She'd had her own problems with drugs. She'd overcome that. She was, going onto this set. She was worried about her weight. She was worried about her abilities to fit on the set. I mean, she had locked herself up in the bathroom, in nerves.
But Kirstie's fears were soon overcome by her sense of humor.
She had come in a day or so before and gotten an argyle vest and had the makeup put a blonde wig on her. So when we came into the table reading, it looked like Shelley was there.
I thought that was a pretty ballsy thing to do.
Being one of the stars of a hit sitcom can result in tremendous fringe benefits, especially for a young, good-looking actor like Woody Harrelson.
There was a constant stream of actresses and women on the set. Glenn Close, Ali Sheedy, Brooke Shields.
The reference you're perhaps making is that he was a real womanizer, but all the different girls on his arms were just a disguise to keep people from learning that he was gay. But at any rate, hopefully people know that's a joke.
For one Cheers actor, stardom definitely had a dark side.
Kelsey Grammer was the bad boy of the Cheers cast.
This guy was, he was a sitcom in himself.
It was when he wasn't working. Those were the hours that were hard to fill.
He'd come in with a 2 hours sleep and unshaven and unbathed, and he'd stink. And B.B. Newworth, I remember once, came into the writer's room and says, I can't do that scene with him. I have to get close to him. He smells like a garbage can. He was missing rehearsals. He'd be asleep in his dressing room. He'd have consumed a fifth of scotch by run-through time. He was way off the map.
He hardly even got dressed. He would wear shorts and flip-flops all the time. He was like out all night, every night.
One night I was going to work and Kelsey was pushing his car with a flat tire down Sunset Boulevard at like 5 in the morning with no shoes and no shirt on. And there was somebody splayed out in the back seat, but to me that was just, part of the single life.
In 1987, Grammer was arrested for driving while intoxicated. Then in 1988, he was arrested again, this time for cocaine possession. In 1990, a bench warrant was issued for his arrest after he failed to appear for his cocaine possession case. After turning himself into the authorities, he was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 10 days community service.
He did one season with a LoJack clip around his leg because he was only allowed to go to work and home.
The final seasons of Cheers saw the cast enjoying their enormous success to the fullest, garnering countless awards, huge audiences, and the corresponding wealth that goes with tremendous success. By the 10th season, Ted Danson was pulling in $450,000 per episode. But no amount of money could convince him to go past 11 years, and in May of 1993, Cheers closed its doors for good. 93 million viewers tuned in to see the final episode, making it the highest-rated show not just of the week, but of the entire year. An amazing ending for a TV series that began its life dead last in the ratings.